Thank you, Dean Robertson. Congratulations, graduates, family, and friends. You know, with this hat, I was actually going to claim that I have a full head of hair, but I guess you put up the picture, so that part's not going to work. You know, for a Wharton MBA graduate, there is no greater honor than to be able to speak at a Wharton graduation. So thank you. Today, I'd like to share with you a few stories from my life. Now, they don't have anything to do with spreadsheets or PowerPoint presentations or case studies. In fact, they don't include anything that you typically cover in a business school class. But I do think that they're important to you just the same. My Wharton MBA gave me the knowledge and skills that I use every day. Thanks to Wharton, I'm able to think with better clarity, communicate with more authority, and act with greater competency than I otherwise would. But there is more to the journey, and that is what I'd like to chat with you today. When I was 21, I graduated from college in India with an engineering degree. At that time, no one else from my family, from either side, had attended college to study engineering. And though I had a couple of good job offers when I graduated, I wanted to further my study in the US. Unfamiliar with how to do this, I applied to about a dozen universities, and fortunately for me, I was actually accepted in several. But there was a problem. I had no way to pay for my dreams. Though I had applied for financial aid, my application was not received in time for me to qualify. When my father and I discussed our options, my hopes began to dim. First-year college expenses in the US at that point in time were 3 times my father's annual salary. While I believed that further study in the US was the right path for me, there was no way that my family of modest means could afford it. In a word, it was impossible. Until my mother found out. The word impossible is in the dictionary of fools, she said. If you have the courage, you can do anything. We'll mortgage the house, she declared, and I'll sell all my jewelry. Now, if you know anything about Indian women, you know that when they offer to sell their jewelry, it can only mean one of 2 things. They're really serious, or they have no jewelry. My mother was serious. I don't understand what loans she and my father took to afford my education. All I know is that a few months after she made that bold statement, I was boarding a plane for the first time that I had ever done that in my life, headed off to America to study. In one pocket, I carried a bank draft made out to the university for the full amount of my tuition and expenses. And in the other pocket, I had all the rest of my money, all $21 of it. Soon after landing at the university, I managed to get a research job. I never used the bank draft. Years later, I found out that on that day when my mother had offered to sell her jewelry, she actually really didn't have that much jewelry to sell. She just had a lot of courage. And that is the gift that she gave to me. And for me, that is far more valuable than all the jewelry in the world. I have drawn on that courage many times. Take 1990. It was a tough year in the economy. I was at the Wharton MBA program, getting ready for the summer. And as summer break approached, I knew I needed a job. Though I couldn't do anything about the economy, I was determined to land the best position possible. And thanks to what I had learned at Wharton, I had complete clarity about what I wanted to do, which was to work in management consulting. My top choice was Bain & Company, with a roster of clients that included many of the world's top organizations. Bain was a premier management consulting organization. It was a dream destination for many of us at Wharton, but getting in wasn't easy. Bain offered first-round interviews to about 225 students from Wharton's class of about 800. Afterwards, just 15 of the 225 would advance to the second round of interviews in Boston, and it being a tough year, Bain planned to hire only 2 people for that summer job. Although I couldn't do anything about the economy, I was determined to land the best position possible. Now, I realized that the odds weren't good for me, but I was hopeful. Call it hubris, call it naivete, but I felt that having a degree from one of India's finest engineering schools, having relevant work experience, and having top grades at Wharton would distinguish me from other candidates. But it didn't. When Bain posted their name of the 225 students that it wanted to interview, my name was not on the list. Dejected, I figured my best shot at getting hired by one of the top companies in management consulting was over before it had even started. And then I remembered what my mother had said. Impossible is in the dictionary of fools. If you have the courage, you can do anything, I reminded myself. And inspired, I called Bain and asked that they give me one last consideration. No, I was firmly told, we have our procedures and we follow them. So I showed up to the hotel where the interviews were underway. Just give me 5 minutes, I pleaded, and once again I was rebuffed, sternly, refusing to give up, even if it meant making a fool of myself in front of my fellow classmates and in front of a potential employer. I sought out the top recruiter and asked if he would chat with me between interviews. My calendar is full, he said, and there is just no time to do that. I've got 15 people to interview from morning to afternoon, and then I'm on a flight. Well, despite being told no several times, I actually waited outside the interviewer's room all day, 8 hours. After his final meeting, he emerged in a hurry, politely apologized one last time, and said he had to take a cab to the airport. Let me ride with you, I said. We can talk on the way. While exhausted from a day of interviews, he relented. And I don't remember what I said exactly, but it must have made an impact, because when the list of the 15 finalists was posted, my name was actually on it. Better still, after the last round of interviews in Boston, I was one of the 2 people who was offered a job. Now, I'd like to tell you that it was my focus and my sense of purpose. No doubt the clarity that Wharton provided had helped. But what really mattered that day was the courage that I got from my mother. The same courage she showed when she took a chance against all odds and put me on that plane to the US. In your journey, there will be times when you will be faced with making a choice, with taking a chance. The numbers will point one way, but your heart may tell you something different. In those moments, have the courage to take a chance. Sometimes on yourself, and sometimes on someone who looks and feels very different from you. I stand before you today because someone, somewhere, had the courage to take a chance on me. My next story is about caring. A few years ago, my children were in elementary school. My wife, Deepna, who's in the audience here today, and I were friends with many families who had children in the same grades as our kids. One day, I dropped by the school at pickup time and noticed something rather interesting. Virtually every child who was coming out greeted Deepna with a hi and a hello and a familiar hug. It seemed like they had known her all their lives. I also noticed something interesting, that the children didn't do this to anyone other than to Deepna. And I wondered why. And then I saw it. When a 6-year-old child approached her, Deepna kneeled down all the way to the ground till she was face to face with the child, looking straight into their eyes, and then she started talking. I also noticed that she was the only adult that day who made the effort to do this. And she did that for each and every child. She knew their names, she knew their personalities, she knew what they liked, she knew what they didn't like. She cared. A 6-year-old child may not know a lot, but they know when someone cares. And when you care for someone, they don't forget. I still remember February 10th, 1999. It was 14 years ago, and yet it seems like yesterday. That day, I got a call from India. My brother had just been killed in a car accident. We were very close. He was 42 years old, had 2 small children. He was my parents' first child, and he was the light of their lives. For them, it seemed like everything ended that day. After 23 hours of flying and 6 hours of driving, I reached a remote small town in India where my parents lived. They looked like they had aged 10 years overnight. I did my best to console them. And when they weren't looking, I wept. The next morning, my father pointed me to the only vase of flowers that was in the room. I picked up the card next to the flowers. It read, "During this most difficult time in your lives, please know that we are with you and will be always." It was signed John Chambers and the Cisco family. A small act of kindness? Perhaps. But for my family, it was much, much more. For my grieving father, it was a touch of compassion and a source of strength at a time when he needed it most. It was an act of caring that I will never forget. A few days later, as I was preparing to return back to the US, my father pulled me aside, and he said something that I still remember. "I'm happy," he said, "that you work for a successful company. But I'm proud that you work for someone who cares." I know that none of this counts when Fortune magazine puts together its list of the most admired companies, or when Harvard Business Review publishes its list of the 100 best performing CEOs. But from where I stand, it counts. My last story is about curiosity. My children, Sonia, Sabrina, and Neil, and Sabrina and Neil are here today, always seem to want to try new things. Like many young people, Sonia, our oldest child, has an inquisitive open mind, but at 17, she's also someone with many friends and many special interests. With Sonia being a second semester senior in high school, Deepna and I worried that she might begin to cruise academically, especially since she had been accepted at her top choice university. Instead of cruise control, however, Sonia seemed to have gone into overdrive. Despite her primary focus in biology and in chemistry, I was surprised a couple of months ago to find out that she had suddenly developed a fascination for business. She was on the internet researching business topics. She was talking to her friends who had been in all those high school business clubs. And a few days ago, she approached my wife and I and said, "I need a business suit." A business suit? I thought she would want something from Abercrombie & Fitch or Hollister, not Ann Taylor. When I asked why, she told me that she had decided to participate in a statewide business competition for high school students. Now, this is someone who's 17 years old, has never taken a single business course in her entire life, and has never participated in any business club, ever. Now she's Sheryl Sandberg. What happened, I wondered? "I don't know," she said. "I guess I just wanted to try something new and find out." Always curious, always open-minded, always trying new things. That's Sonia. And thanks to her disposition, she's always been able to acquire new skills and abilities. Oh, and that business competition that she wanted that suit for, turns out she placed second in the state of California out of 3,000 students. Am I proud? You bet I'm proud. But I've also learned something. Each time that she demonstrates a new interest or acquires a new capability or skill, she shows me the value of something that Tom talked about, the value of curiosity. We all like to think of ourselves as curious, but are we? I was put to the test 3 years ago when I decided to write a book based on my business experiences. I worked closely with two people on my team, T.C. Doyle and Sarah Halper. They often had different points of view than mine, and they were never afraid to express them. Even if I disagreed, I always listened to them, and there was never a day that I didn't value what they said. Sonia made me curious about social media. Before the publication of my book, I thought Twitter and Facebook and blogging were things that my daughter and her friends did. It wasn't for someone professional like me. I was just not interested in telling someone that I was sitting in Starbucks having a coffee. That is not important to the rest of the world, I felt. But TC and Sarah said no. They insisted otherwise. So they helped me set up accounts. And then they worked with me to write those blogs, to nurture that online community, to send out tweets, and to cultivate an online following. And suddenly, I found myself connecting with thousands and thousands of people instantly. And when I did, all the business publications, Forbes and Fortune and Businessweek and The Economist and The Washington Post and The Huffington Post, all of them came to me and wanted me to participate on their blogging platforms, which allowed me to engage an even wider audience. Although my book was well written and well received, I realized that it was a one-way monologue until I learned how to turn it into a two-way conversation with people everywhere based on what I had learned from TC and from Sarah and from Sonia. I'm glad I was curious enough and open enough to try something outside of my comfort zone. And thanks to the blogs and the tweets and the online dialogues, word spread quickly. 3 months after publication, our book, Doing Both, made every bestseller list in the country, including the one published by the New York Times. My daughter Sonia's example of always being curious had opened my mind to a whole new field, and being curious had paid off. Today, is your graduation, but it is also your commencement, the start of the journey of the rest of your life. Wharton has given you great skills, but as you begin your journey, there are other traits that you will have to draw upon. The debates and discourses, the cases and courses, the spreadsheets and statistics have equipped you to address any business situation. Wharton has given you the clarity to determine what the right decision is. But no business school can give you the courage to make that decision. That must come from elsewhere. Wharton has empowered you with insight in your interactions, confidence in your conversations, and polish in your presentations. Wharton has taught you to communicate, but no business school can teach you to care. That must come from elsewhere. Wharton has provided you engaging experiences, powerful perspectives, and invaluable insights. Wharton has made you competent, but no business school can teach you to be curious. That must come from elsewhere. Wharton has the best faculty on the planet, and although they have taught you much, you will find your courage, caring, and curiosity in your own journey. I found courage in the words of my mother, caring in the actions of my wife, and curiosity in the spirit of my daughter. Each has taught me something, and that has made all the difference in my journey. Several years from now, some of you will have the honor of speaking to the graduating class at your alma mater about your journey. And when you reflect back, you will likely find that your best stories are not about clarity, communications, or competence. Instead, they will be stories about the courage to do the right thing, about caring when it wasn't required, and about curiosity to learn about the world and change it for the better. These stories won't come from your head. They will be stories from your heart, and they will be the stories that no one will forget. 3 weeks from today, our first child, Sonia, will graduate from high school. This fall, she will start as a freshman in the College of Arts and Sciences at Penn. We're very happy that she will be at a great university where she will learn a lot. When we drop her in Philadelphia this August, 1 week after her 18th birthday, our hearts will be a little heavier and our home will be a little quieter. But as she embarks on the journey of her life as an adult, we will cheer from the sidelines and wish for her that extra something that'll last her a lifetime. Her own curiosity, her mother's caring, and her grandmother's courage. As you begin your journey, for each of you, I wish no less. Good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you, Inder, for those wonderful remarks for the students, and they were just as poignant for all of the parents in the audience. Thank you.